When I was 33, I met Tom at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. He was 5 years younger than me, a newly minted doctor, full of enthusiasm and curiosity. He often sought my advice, and I found his innocence endearing. At first, I never considered dating him. After all, I was older, and our roles were different. But Tom's persistence wore me down. He spoke to me every day, making it impossible to ignore his presence. Eventually, I let go of my worries, and we started dating. 2 years later, we were married. I thought we had a strong bond, but I had no idea that the very thing I feared, our age gap, would become the reason he would betray me. For 5 years, we lived what seemed like a happy married life. But then, things began to change. Tom started making cruel comments about my age. Younger women are definitely better. I can't even walk with you in public. You're embarrassing. At first, I tried to ignore his remarks, thinking he was just stressed from work. But his attitude only worsened. He openly flirted with younger nurses, laughing with them in a way that he never did with me anymore. Then one day, I learned the truth. Tom had been cheating on me. I found out about his affair through whispers at the hospital. The woman was a former patient, 10 years younger than me. I had never met her, as I worked in a different department. When I confronted Tom, he didn't even bother denying it. Instead, he smirked and said, "With an old lady like you, it's no wonder we couldn't have kids. My girlfriend is carrying my child."
His words shattered me.
But I refused to let him break me completely. I decided to divorce him. When I mentioned alimony, his smug attitude turned into fury. "I was married to an old hag like you for 5 years, and you expect money? I should be the one getting paid." His father even called me, saying it was only natural for a young man to prefer a younger woman. I was disgusted. But I stood my ground. I sought legal help, and in the end, I won.
Tom had to pay.
After the divorce, I left behind everything that reminded me of Tom. I moved out, changed my last name back to Britain, and tried to rebuild my life.
But the gossip followed me.
At work, I could feel people whispering, pitying me for being dumped by my younger husband. The constant judgment weighed heavily on me, and eventually, I quit my job. For a while, I felt lost. But I refused to let my past define me. I applied to a small maternity clinic and got hired. The work was fulfilling, and my new colleagues were kind. I thought I had finally left my old life behind. I was wrong. One day, a pregnant woman named Sarah Evans arrived at the clinic. The name sent a chill down my spine. When I checked the records, I confirmed my suspicion. Her husband was Tom. I had never met her in person, but now she was here under my care. I decided to remain professional and kept my past with Tom a secret. But fate had other plans. A few days later, Tom came with his wife for her checkup. When our eyes met, his widened in shock. He clearly never expected to see me again. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Before I could answer, his wife turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "Wait, is she?" Her expression changed to one of forced distress. "Did you come to this hospital just to harass us?" she accused. I stared at her, stunned. "Of course not. I was here first. I had no idea you even moved here." But Tom wouldn't listen. "You're stalking me, aren't you? You're a bitter old woman who squeezed money out of me. Who knows what you'll do next?" His words echoed in the examination room, loud enough for everyone to hear. I felt the weight of their stares, judgment creeping in once again. His wife played the victim perfectly, clutching her belly. "Oh, I'm scared. I feel like she's been looking at me with hate ever since I came here. What if something happens to my baby?" Their performance was enough for the doctor to step in. I was asked to leave the examination room. As I walked out, I clenched my fists. I wasn't the villain here. But once again, Tom had turned the narrative against me. Despite their accusations, I continued working at the clinic. Over time, whispers started spreading not about me but about Tom. It turned out that his perfect marriage wasn't so perfect after all. Sarah was growing tired of him, just as he had grown tired of me. One day, I overheard a conversation between two nurses. "Did you hear? Tom's wife left him, took the kid, and everything." I felt a sense of déjà vu. It seemed karma had finally caught up with him. Tom had abandoned me for a younger woman, thinking she would make him happy. But people don't change. Just like he grew tired of me, he grew tired of her. And she, in turn, had grown tired of his selfishness. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't the one who had lost. Tom was. Looking back, I regret nothing. I gave my love to the wrong man, but that experience only made me stronger. I am no longer defined by my past. I am not the abandoned wife, nor the woman scorned. I am Elizabeth Britton, and I am free. Despite Tom's dramatic accusations, the hospital staff knew I wasn't at fault. However, since Sarah was a patient, one who was pregnant, no less, no one wanted to upset her. She used this to her advantage, whispering cruel things about me every time she visited. The once welcoming hospital now felt suffocating. No one openly sided with her, but they also avoided confrontation. I realized that no matter how professional I remained, I couldn't change how people saw me. With over 6 months left until Sarah's due date, I knew I couldn't endure it. No job was worth this emotional toll. So I resigned. It's a shame, but there's nothing we can do, the hospital director said, though his expression looked almost relieved. I felt like I was being punished for something I hadn't even done. Exhausted, I returned to my parents' home in the countryside. They welcomed me without asking questions, sensing I needed time to heal. At first, I couldn't bring myself to do anything. I spent my days in bed, overwhelmed with bitterness. But as the weeks passed, I began to feel guilty for being idle. One day, I noticed a small supermarket was hiring. It was nothing like my past jobs in hospitals, but I decided to give it a try. At first, I felt out of place. But soon, I found the simplicity of the work refreshing. I no longer carried the heavy burden of life and death decisions. I didn't have to worry about gossip or reputation. For the first time in years, I felt light. 3 years later, my hard work paid off. I was offered a full-time position. I was genuinely happy. The past no longer haunted me. Then, out of nowhere, life threw me another surprise. One day, my store manager approached me. "Have you ever considered an arranged marriage?" I blinked in surprise. "Excuse me? I know just the right person for you." I laughed, shaking my head. At 45, I had no interest in remarrying. But the manager was persistent. The man in question, James, was a 47-year-old divorcee. His marriage had ended for the same reason as mine. His spouse had cheated on him. At first, I was reluctant, but eventually I agreed to meet him. When I arrived at the restaurant, I spotted him right away. As I entered, he stood up too quickly and bam, hit his forehead against the table. "Ouch," he groaned, rubbing his reddening forehead. I couldn't help it, I laughed. In that moment, something inside me softened. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. James turned out to be kind, easy to talk to, and incredibly thoughtful. As we spoke, he revealed something unexpected. He had requested this meeting because he had fallen for me at first sight when he visited my supermarket during a business trip. Despite my initial doubts, I found myself wanting to see him again. 6 months later, we got married. James and I lived peacefully together. Since we were both in our late 40s, we never planned on having children. We were simply happy to have each other. Then, something unexpected happened. At 48, I started feeling unwell. I assumed it was just stress or a minor illness. When I finally went to the hospital, the doctor's words left me in shock. "You're pregnant." I stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible," I whispered. I had never imagined I would conceive at this age. I hadn't even considered the possibility. When I told James, his reaction was priceless. "That's great. So, who's the lucky one?" "Do I know them?" he joked, completely misunderstanding. I roll my eyes. "Yes, you do. In fact, he's sitting right in front of me." James blinked. "Wait me." For a moment, he just stared at my stomach. Then his eyes widened in shock. "Our baby." I nodded. Suddenly, he let out a laugh, a pure, joyful, disbelieving laugh. This is a miracle," he whispered before pulling me into a tight embrace. Despite our joy, doubts crept in. I was well aware of the risks of pregnancy at my age. Would I be able to carry a healthy baby? Would I live long enough to see my child grow up? Doctors asked me the same question. What do you want to do? I knew some people would judge me for having a child so late in life. I could already hear the whispers. How old will she be when her kid turns 20? But as I placed my hand on my stomach, I knew my answer. I want to keep this baby. James didn't hesitate. Then we will. I saw the fear in his eyes, fear for my health, for the future. But more than anything, I saw love. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Years passed, and I built the life I never thought possible. One day, as I was shopping in town, I ran into an old colleague. Did you hear? Tom's second marriage ended in divorce too. I smiled. I no longer felt anger toward Tom. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The difference was, I had found happiness. I returned home that evening, where James and our child were waiting for me. Looking at them, I knew one thing for certain. Tom had left me for a younger woman, believing I was too old to be loved. Now, at nearly 50, I had a husband who adored me and a beautiful child I never thought I'd have. And I had never felt younger. Life had thrown challenges my way, but I had emerged stronger. I wasn't the abandoned wife. I wasn't the bitter ex. I was Elizabeth Britton, a woman who had found love, happiness, and the last laugh. After much discussion and careful consideration, my husband and I decided to go through with the pregnancy. Our doctor explained the risks, and though our families were initially shocked, they ultimately supported us. We chose to give birth at a large, well-equipped hospital with an experienced medical team. The doctors and nurses were kind and professional, making me feel reassured. On the day of one of my checkups, both the obstetrician and an internist were scheduled to be present as an extra precaution. My husband had planned to accompany me, but due to an unavoidable work commitment, I went alone. I had no idea I was about to run into someone from my past. As I entered the examination room, my heart nearly stopped.
Tom.
My ex-husband was standing right there, wearing a doctor's coat. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. But then he turned and saw me. A slow smirk spread across his face. Wait, seriously? You are the 48-year-old pregnant woman. Then, to my shock, he burst out laughing. The obstetrician and nurse in the room looked confused, but Tom didn't seem to care. This is unbelievable. Giving birth at your age? That's just gross. His words echoed in the small room. I clenched my fists. My body was already tense with anxiety about my pregnancy, and here was my ex-husband, the man who had betrayed me, mocking me in front of the medical staff. You have no right to say that to me. Oh, I'm just worried about you, he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. An old lady like you pregnant? That's reckless. You should be embarrassed. The nurse gasped. Even the obstetrician looked uncomfortable. I stood up, keeping my voice steady. Are you really a doctor? Speaking to a patient like that? What are you acting so high and mighty for? Tom scoffed. Most of the patients at this hospital are wealthy. Do you even belong here? That was the last straw. Excuse me, Dr. Evans, I said coldly. I wouldn't dream of giving birth in a hospital with a doctor like you. With that, I turned to leave. Yeah, get out of here, Tom sneered. But then, Dr. Evans, wait. A nurse had left the room moments earlier. Now she returned, whispering something to the obstetrician. He paled. Dr. Evans, do you even know who she is? Tom rolled his eyes. What, some random old lady trying to have a miracle baby? The obstetrician's voice dropped. She is the wife of the heir to the Miles Group, the same Miles Group that has made significant donations to this hospital. Silence. Tom froze. What? You may not have known since you're new here, the nurse added, her tone icy. Tom's face drained of color. I crossed my arms. I have no connection to you anymore, Tom. But even if I did, what you just said was completely unacceptable. The obstetrician sighed. Honestly, I can't believe a doctor would say something like that. And then, I'm sorry I'm late. My husband walked in, smiling. until he saw my expression. His eyes darted between me, Tom, and the hospital staff. Is something wrong? I took a deep breath. This man here, Dr. Evans, just told me that giving birth at 48 is disgusting. My husband's expression immediately darkened. He said, "What?" I saw the moment he recognized Tom. His whole body tensed. "Are you Dr. Evans?" His voice was calm, but dangerously calm. Tom swallowed hard. I didn't mean. What kind of hospital allows a doctor to insult a patient? I can't trust my wife and unborn child to a place like this. At that moment, the hospital director arrived, looking flustered. I heard there was an issue. My husband wasted no time. "Director, we came to this hospital because my father recommended it. But I can't believe you employ a doctor like this." The director turned to Tom. "What happened here?" I opened my mouth to explain, but before I could, "Director, you don't understand. I didn't mean." The director's face darkened. "Dr. Evans, you may not realize this, but I only hired you as a favor to your father. I had no idea you were this unprofessional." "Wait, you don't mean?" "You're fired. Effective immediately." Tom's jaw dropped. "What?" "Director, you can't be serious. I don't need a doctor who speaks this way to patients. Get out. And don't come near this hospital again." A stunned silence filled the room. Then, the obstetrician grabbed Tom's arm. "Let's go." Tom struggled, but the director gave him one last glare. "If you resist, I will have security escort you out." Tom's face twisted with rage, but he had no choice. As he was dragged out, I heard him muttering under his breath. Why does this keep happening to me?" I exhaled, my body finally relaxing. The director turned back to us, his face filled with remorse. "I'm terribly sorry. I promise, this is not what our hospital stands for." A few days later, Tom called. "Elizabeth, please. Talk to the director. Ask him to take me back." Apparently, he had no other job prospects. He had been fired from multiple hospitals due to his arrogance and poor treatment of patients. His father had given him one last chance, and now that was gone, too. I didn't even bother replying. My husband took the phone and shut him down completely. "If you ever contact my wife again, I will report you for harassment." Tom never called again. Some time later, as we were heading home from the hospital, we stopped by a convenience store. There, behind the counter, was Tom. He was wearing the store uniform, his face pale and exhausted. He looked up, and for a brief moment, I saw pure humiliation in his eyes. "Elizabeth," he whispered, but I said nothing. I turned and walked away. I never went to that store again. A year later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She was perfect, beautiful.
Mine.
No matter what happens, I will raise her with love and care. But there's just one small problem. My husband is completely obsessed with her. Since the moment she was born, he has spoiled her. He's always carrying her, always doting on her. He calls her his little princess and melts whenever she giggles. At this rate, she's going to have him wrapped around her tiny little fingers. I smiled to myself. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Please feel free to comment below if you like this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.